Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Joel Kahn. Joel, excited to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Greatly appreciate it. Looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. I'm appreciating you as well too and all the awesome things that you're doing. And of course, before we jumped into that conversation, I wanted to read a little bit more about Joel so you can hear about some of those awesome things that he's been working on. And Joel has always been driven by growing companies and making them better. People define the word better in various ways, but as an operations executive, COO, this means profitable growth, better margins, more engaged employees, more engaged customers, happier owners, and stakeholders. This has come from years of analyzing business situations and diving into what one company successful and one company fail. And throughout Joel's career, he has successfully managed both the revenue and cost side of P&Ls as large as $45 million. In all his roles, including that as an integrator for companies running on the Entrepreneur Operating System, or EOS, he has achieved an unbroken record of performance, driving turnarounds and building expansions that has significantly elevated the revenue positions for the companies. Joel's strengths come from looking at the entire company and figuring out how the individual pieces fit together to make a cohesive unit so that the company operates at the highest level. And he firmly believes that the sales needs operation, which needs accounting, which needs human resources, which needs finance, which needs marketing, which needs sales. And Joel finds the best way for these groups to work together as a cohesive unit, proving that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And absolutely appreciate the opportunity I got to connect with Joel. He was a wealth of knowledge and information, super helpful. And I always appreciate having the opportunity to connect with givers and people that are always looking to have that helpful attitude. And I really, really, really love his holistic approach. That's the word I'm going to use with how he approaches companies and how he helps them to reach their goals. So Joel, excited to have you on the show. Are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
I'm ready. I'm excited as well.
Absolutely, me too. So I guess to kick everything off, let's rewind the clock a little bit, hear a little bit more on how you got started with a Call Your CEO story.
Yeah. So thanks again for having me. Greatly appreciated. So the story, I feel like sometimes I'm the old guy in the room because my resume looks like quite a travel blog sometimes. But even before that, I started working when I was 11, raising a single parent household. And my mom was pretty straightforward. If you want something, you got to go earn it. So 11 years old, $2.50 an hour. I worked for a local catering company on the weekends. Did those type of jobs, did some landscaping. And I bring up landscaping because my senior year of high school, I landscaped all summer with a friend of mine, guy I played football with. And at the end of that summer, I said, I can't do this. I got to go to college. This is hard work. So all those people in the skilled trades and blue collar that are getting their hands dirty every day, I give you all the credit, really all the credit. So I was lucky enough, went to school, paid for my way to go through school, went to Ohio State, otherwise known as the
The
Ohio State
Ohio State.
University now,
Yes.
right? Right. I am a Buckeye through and through, but a little irony there. I have an undergrad in marketing, got out, really didn't want to, back when I went out, it was fundamentally sales. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. And actually went back and got a second degree in accounting. And that was probably the precipice for me looking at companies a little bit differently and how the different pieces, parts need to work together. So, got my start as an accountant in the home building industry, residential construction, accounting, then estimating, then operations. It kind of moved my way up. And after about 9, 10 years of doing that, actually had the ability or the stupidity, I haven't figured that one out yet, and went off on my own and started my own custom home building company. And for anybody out there that's taken that entrepreneurial step, it's a big one and it's a scary one. So was very successful with that until, the infamous mortgage meltdown of 2009. It was unfortunate, but it was a great learning experience. And that's when I kind of looked at who I worked with and what I did and made some determinations that was really my first insight of I'm only going to work with people I want to work with. I'd spent a lot of time working with different types of people, just really ignoring that piece of it. And I guess I would say ignoring the human touch. And I was guilty of it as well. So after that, did some consulting and really started working with some great people. skip ahead about 5 years, was reach out to a recruiter who was looking for a COO and an integrator. Speaking of EOS and Entrepreneur Operating System, I had no idea what an integrator was. They said, well, if you're interviewing, read this book called Traction or, Rocket Fuel. And of course, the numbers nerd, I went right to Traction, read it, and said, this makes all the sense of the world. Where have you been all my life? So spent some time working for a company, growing it profitably, about 3.5 years, got recruited to another one, and found that I really loved being a COO, but I loved working for myself. And it's a little interesting there because, it is the CEO podcast, but it's right. I'm the CEO of what is now known as a fractional COO company. So I work with clients to help them. If you're an EOS, I help them gain traction. For those not in EOS, I come in, and a fractional is different than a consultant because they actually sit in the seat. So they're on site. I have direct reports, but I'm only doing a part of my time. So I'm able to really keep my creative juices flowing because I have multiple clients. I'm able to help more people, and that's the most fun. This is the most fun I've had in my career. So probably a little long-winded, but I've got 20 more jobs I could add to that resume if we wanted to.
Nice. No, I definitely appreciate the wind was perfect. So I appreciate you going through that because I think as much as I want to know and we want to know exactly what you do, we want to know why you do it. And I think it's hearing, especially how pivotal that was by taking that accounting course where it gave you that kind of seed planet, it sounded like, for looking at things holistically. I think it's kind of, you've been able to kind of build from there. But one of the things that really kind of stuck out to me, you called it your travel blog of experience. I absolutely love that because I imagine having those different experiences when you are in that COO role, that fractional role, and you come in with organizations, that is probably something I imagine you can pull from and be able to provide expertise, knowledge, and probably maybe unique and innovative way for people to approach those problems.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So, to clarify, because I wasn't very clear, I actually got a second undergrad degree in accounting.
Okay.
So that's when I really started. There's two ways to look at it. My left brain and my right brain are constantly fighting with each other because
Mhm.
there's that creative side and there's that non-creative side that's more black and white in accounting. But that's when it really started to hit me of it. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. We need sales. We need marketing to help create sales. We need sales to create opportunities for the operation side, and we need people to count the money. And really breaking it down into its three basics: it's sales and marketing, it's operations, accounting, and finance. And those three all have to work together. And there is a little bit of an orchestra conductor that comes with it, knowing when to bring a little bit up over here, a little bit softer over here, but making sure there's a cohesive unit, that the company works as a cohesive unit in order to get to where we want to go.
Yeah, and I love that analogy of being the conductor because I think so many times you're not sure how best to kind of grow and scale a business or what to kind of even focus on. I think for one, it kind of sounds like it's very important, and what I imagine you bring to a lot of these conversations and these organizations is being able to kind of see the forest for the trees and see, first of all, like there's not just one song or one instrument that's being played, but all these different instruments and how you can, maybe dampen one and kind of increase the volume on another and how that ends up coming into a very beautiful song.
Yeah, that's really nice. The other way you can look at it is you're kind of an engineer and you're mixing, right? You're looking at things going, what do we need to do? What needs to happen? Now, don't get me wrong. Without sales, there's nothing to talk about operationally. There's no money to count. So when I come in, and it's interesting, most COOs or most people look at COOs because it's chief operating. They think it's operations, but the good ones out there understand that all the members of the family need to be loved equally. All the
Mm.
members of the band, the orchestra, whatever it is, every one of us is important, and it's figuring out how to best get those different cogs running smoothly with each other. And 9 times out of 10, it comes down to the human piece of it. Where are you in the human touch of all of that? So as much you have great people, great salespeople, right? They're still humans, accountants. Everybody is a human, and that's something that I try to keep in mind all the time, is that we are talking about humans and not just uh, robots. At least not yet.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to hold our breath on that because who knows how, all this technology and things are happening from there. But I often say, like, I love that you brought that up because I often say that we can forget about the human part of business and the human part of life. And I think that even when we're talking about technology, I think we sometimes forget that technology is usually gathering information and data from human habits and what humans are doing. So even that is aware of how important humans are to be able to kind of create those connections. So I love that that's a strong foundational element to everything that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. So I know you touched on a little bit on how you work with clients. I wanted to drill down a little bit more to hear like how that process works. Maybe even when people are aware that they need to give you a call or reach out to you. Do you have an experience or what that looks like?
Oftentimes, entrepreneurs, especially in smaller businesses, and smaller it can be 1 million to 5 million. Usually, as an entrepreneur, they're okay running it. They start getting to that 5 to 10 person team, $2 to $4 million, depending on the margins. They're doing so many different things that they're really not doing that one thing well. So oftentimes, or almost always, I'll come in. We start the conversation of what's working, what's not working. The other part of the conversation is I'll look at them and say, Gresh, what do you love to do? What do you want to do?
Mhm.
So some clients are saying, I've done this 20 years, I'm burnt out. I want to move to the owner's seat. I just want to have a vision for the company and let other people drive it. Sometimes they say, I'm a salesperson. I love to sell. I've done it for 25 years. I want to continue it for 25 years. I'm having one of those conversations right now. They're doing the operational piece. It's the most painful thing that they're doing right now. So I want to talk to people about what's their highest and best use of their time, because sometimes you do have an entrepreneur where they're they're they don't love to sell, but they know that's what they have to do because of those one-on-one connections. So we'll talk about what does that look like over the next 3, 6, 12 months, and do we start talking about how we get them out of that sales seat and more into just a rainmaker seat, and then eventually into an ownership CEO or visionary seat. So those conversations oftentimes happen organically. I will say that the downside of it is most of the time, these entrepreneurs have to be feeling a decent amount of pain before they really start looking around for a better way to do things. And that's where most of my referrals come, because everything I do is based on referrals.
Mhm.
But that's where most of my referrals come in, when someone is just lamenting about some of the struggles they're having, whether it's people or processes or something like that, or clients sometimes. I've talked to my clients, we've been talking about, do we pivot away from what it looks like today because the economy is changing, the world is changing? And the answer is yes. So they need to go figure out how to pivot away. And as they figure out how to pivot away or pivot into a new business line, I keep their current one up and running. And then I partner with them, more thought leadership, thought partnership, on how we make the next one successful, and really putting the processes in place day one so we don't have some of the growing pains that they had at their other business.
Nice. I appreciate you breaking that down. And I think a lot of times when that pain happens, often there can be an opportunity for that transformation. And that transformation can be, like you said, in those different scenarios of maybe having a different line of business and making sure that you're able to kind of pivot or put all those things that happen and those considerations are so huge. But I think when you're probably in that pain, I think it really resonates with me that first of all, that you and your story, you talked about like how you were able to say that this is what I want to do. I want to work with people that light me up, that I enjoy working with, and you were able to kind of put that in place. I think sometimes when we have that pain, or we're sometimes in those frustrating moments, we don't realize that there is another way. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I think for one, you embody it. For two, I imagine those are a lot of the conversations that you're having with these leaders within the organizations.
They are, and it comes from experience. I used to say I worked for the worst, most awful person, and then I found one who wants to compete with them. And right, it was really that last pain point that was the precipice of saying, okay, I'm only working with people I want to work with, and sometimes it's a little painful when you look at someone and go, this isn't a good match, right? This is not going to work out. I know who I am. I'm not going to necessarily change. I don't want to change you as a person, but this is probably not going to go very well. And when you're having that first, what I like to call discovery call, whether it's 30 minutes or 90 minutes, the 90-minute ones oftentimes are the ones where you have this flow, which Gresh, I feel like when you and I first talked, we had this flow.
Right.
We were just two people talking. That's all
Mm-hmm.
that it was.
Mm-hmm.
Those are great conversations. If you're in the conversation of everything is it's one word questions or it's one word answers, there's just that connection is missing, and we're going to be connected at the hip, right? My entrepreneurs, the CEOs, we're connected at the hip. And if we can't get through that first call without being very, very comfortable with each other, it's not going to work. And I don't, I don't mean to write people off quickly, because it very well could be me. Let's just put it this way: 9 times out of 10, it's me, right? It's my style, it's my personality, it's what I say. I'll own it. But the ones that do, we hit it off. It is, to use the EOS term, it becomes rocket fuel, right? We're on that wavelength, in the same wavelength, very, very quickly. There's not this massive learning curve about each other. There's some transparency. There's trust. And I'm one of those people who, we need to have that within the first couple conversations. If it doesn't exist, if you're holding everything close to the vest and you're guarded and you don't trust me day one, you're not going to trust me day 31. Let's just shake hands, wish each other the best, and move on our separate ways. That's okay. I'm not for everyone.
Yeah, yeah, it's so funny. I used to one of the training, I had a sales training, and one of the trainers, she would always say that I'm not a onesie. I don't fit for everybody, and that's okay. That's powerful in terms of knowing that. But I love the power of being attuned again to that human part. Like even when you're having those interactions, whether you know when if something clicking or isn't clicking, because I think again it just leads to more success, because I think there's power in knowing that okay, maybe I'm not the right fit for you. It doesn't necessarily mean like you're wrong or I'm wrong or any of those things. It just ends up being like, do the puzzle pieces fit together, or do they seem like they're going to? And if so, then you can again do really phenomenal things. But I love how you're attuned to that to be able to make sure that you are, making that beautiful music as we referenced earlier. Do you feel like that's part of what I would like to call your secret sauce? That could be for yourself, the business, or a combination of both. But is it your ability to be attuned to that, and of course have all the other experience, skills, and ability to be able to execute? Do you think bringing that together is your secret sauce?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's one of the sauces available. I don't know if it's my secret sauce. It's a great emotional, what I would call an emotional question, because I'm probably not aware of it as much as I should be.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that's one of my secret sauces. I go to more of a black and white secret sauce if I'm able to sit in, even though I'm a COO, I've sat in the seat of a CFO and a CRO, and I can do those things. And I understand the orchestration of it. But when you bring this up, I go, I think that is certainly one of them, is to know. And sometimes, Gresh, it's within the first 5 minutes.
Mm.
I tell the story of, I spoke with a gentleman who was looking for a fractional CO specifically, and we were having a conversation, and he was ultra successful, really good looking. He was a salesman at heart, and I'm sitting across the table from this person going, no one has ever said no to this person.
Mm.
And when I said, what does 30, 60, 90 days look like as success for you? He's like, well, I don't know. Okay, so let me ask a different question. What what do you want out of this person? And his response was really, I don't know if he understood how transparent it was, He said, I just want them to do everything I don't want to do.
Mm,
And I thought, this is not a good fit
right.
because you're looking for someone just to offload, and that whether that matches my skill set or not doesn't matter. I don't want to say he didn't care. He didn't care. He just
Mm,
said, I just want this. And it was more of, he wanted 25% admin, 25% COO, 25% emotional support person, and 25% I couldn't define.
mm,
And at the end of it, thanked him greatly. And he said, what do you think? And I said, I think, it's not a great fit. It's not for me. This isn't what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something different. And like I said, he was not used to not having people say yes to him.
right.
And he was, what am I missing? And I said, it's just, very much, it's not you, it's me. What
Mm,
I'm looking for out of somebody is more than what you want to do. And you'll find your person, but it's not me. And the irony, Gresh, is that was about 9 months ago. He still hasn't found anyone.
mm,
And I feel bad because he has a good business. It can be a great business if he just finds someone that he can trust. And
mm.
I think that's where his biggest struggle is.
Yeah, and I appreciate you so much in sharing that. And there's so much power again, and like realizing that you can step away from what might be really great opportunities, and knowing that it's not the opportunity you're necessarily looking for. And by stepping away, it allows further opportunities to kind of come in the door. I'm a really big believer in that. But I don't know how you feel about this, but sometimes that we can call it so many different things, call it a gut feeling, and with it, whatever it is in that 5 minutes, like I really believe like a lot of that is based off of experiences that we had. And I feel like sometimes we may not be able to kind of quantify it or articulate it or say it's this, that, or the other. But sometimes with those feelings come because maybe we've had or seen or been around that exact same person, and we're like, you know what? I don't know what it is, but it's just not feeling right. But it may be because that same person walked in the door and we didn't have a great, conversation or relationship before, so it kind of triggers us again. Do you feel like that happens a lot, and is built on actual experience and sometimes interactions that we have in the past?
Oh, 100%. I think you nailed it. My very first visionary CEO that I worked with, as far as when I was learning, became an integrator. He called
Mhm.
it Spidey Sense,
There you
right? So for
go.
those comic book or now movie
Yeah,
buffs
yeah.
that are he'd walk in my office, he'd go, I just have my Spidey senses going off about XYZ or about this person. What do you think? And I'm like, yeah, it's kind of interesting. I see what you're saying there. But it does come with experience. And as much as when we're younger, we come out of college or out of high school or we out of our first job, and we think we know a lot because we've learned a lot. We don't realize just how much we still have to learn. So it's those experiences, good and bad. And the tough part about life sometimes is that you learn so much more from the bad experiences than you do the good. And your takeaways of, okay, this is how that ended up. Let's not let that happen again. So maybe it's a little bit of a defense mechanism
Right.
in ourselves that we say that was a bad experience. And I think there are those layers and those different levers our brain moves so fast that it is, what I think it was a Malcolm Gladwell was a tipping point.
Yeah.
And there was another book that I was reading, and it said, if you think something is not quite right, it probably isn't.
Right.
And one of my last manager in the home building business, he said, you can do this on your own because
Mhm.
if you don't think something looks right, it probably isn't. And that just it had such great depth to it, and it's a very simple concept, right? If you see something you don't think it looks right, it probably isn't. You're going, that's pretty. It's so simple yet so deep because learning to trust our gut instincts, it, it's a great tool for ourselves.
Yeah, and I almost feel like it gets, sometimes misrepresented around being woo woo, but I think it's really based in usually those experiences, like you said, it might be defense mechanisms, or I feel like I've seen you, or I've had this experience, or it's or deja vu, because you're going whatever it is. At the end of the day, I mean, I think that we should definitely trust those things because, it can lead us to success, and success breeds success, and when we are paying attention to that, it provides that opportunity for us to kind of build upon what we can do and what we can be, opportunities that come in door, just really phenomenal things just happen from there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had this conversation, so I have been lucky to meet some very successful military personnel.
Mm.
I've had some clients that were FBI agents. I have some clients that were from West Point, and I have one. And I just spoke with a gentleman about a week and a half ago. He's an Army Ranger, and he's more my age. He's retired a long time, and he said he was out with his wife, and he just said we were at this location in Columbus where we live, and he said we walked outside of the restaurant, and he goes, "Man, it just did something wasn't right." So he took his wife's arm, he took his wife by the arm and said, let's just go ahead and go home. And sure enough, 15 minutes later, as they were driving, turns out on the news there was a shooting that was about 50 yards away from where he was.
Wow.
And he told me that, and it really, the chills up and down my spine. Number one, that it's sad that it happened. Number two, that his spidey sense from his background was so strong. And it's a little crazy, I guess, but like he just knew something wasn't going right where he was, that there were people out and they were looking. And I don't know if he saw something or he heard something. He doesn't remember, but he told me that story. And I just, like I said, chills up and down my spine. Number one, that he was okay. But number two, like, how did you know?
Right.
And it's spending time abroad on active duty and doing certain things over and over again that it becomes muscle memory, but it's your brain as the muscle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you put that time in terms of doing that, all the training and things and different scenarios, I imagine he was in. It's another Malcolm Gladwell book, which is Outliers. It talks about the 10,000 hours, and he talks
Yeah.
about it more in the frame of success. But I imagine the exact same thing where we have that spidey sense feeling that's going on. It's based on the 10,000 hours probably of experiences that you may have had or not had that kind of leads you there. So absolutely appreciate that. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I want to ask
Okay.
you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an Apple book or even a habit that you have, but what's something that makes you more effective and efficient?
So, books, I'm a simple man, is what I like to say. One of my favorite books is Who Moved My Cheese,
Mm.
by Ken Blanchard. He also did Raving Fans, loved Raving Fans, really loved Who Moved My Cheese, and really about activity. So that's a book that if anybody hasn't read it or listened to it, and it's a fast read, it's a fast listen. It's just so great about being active, making some decisions, and moving on those decisions. A couple other hacks. One that I loved. I heard this a couple weeks ago. I was and it was in a planning session with one of my clients, and somebody had said, we were talking about how we get started, because there's some pivoting going on. And they said, stop getting to 100%, stop getting to 90%. Let me give you the math. If you can get to 80% and start doing something, if you go another 80% on top, you're at 96%. 80% of 96%, you're at 99%.
Mm.
And the numbers nerd that I am, that was another one that was powerful to me. It was, stop trying to be perfect about it. Just get out there. When I went off on my own, somebody said, do you have a website? And I was like, I didn't even think about a website. Contacted my digital marketing person and said, how do I do a website? And she said, give me a few hours. 3 hours later, it's one page, but it's up and running. Is it 80%? Probably not. And someone like you, Gresh, would look at it and go, Joel, you're not even 40%, but I'm up. Right. So
Yeah.
I sent him a note and I said, hey, here's my website, just got started. Let me know if you have any questions. But it continued the conversation. So that 80% rule, you go 80, 96, 99. That's kind of my latest one. And then the other one that I really like is my last position. I was with a startup, and we were talking about valuation. Everyone talks about valuation in startups. Oh, well, we're trying to be this, we're trying to be that. And, it's still out there that a unicorn's at $1 billion. If you can get $1 billion valuation, you're a unicorn. And I read an article, and I wish I would have saved it because I want to give credit to the person who wrote it. They said, don't be a unicorn, be a donkey. And they said, unicorns are this mythical creature who have this great look and all of these things. Be a donkey, right? Be a workhorse, be the one who gets things done. And that resonated with me because I was in conflict, mostly healthy conflict with the CEO I understand valuation's important, but if we don't do the basics, there isn't a valuation to even talk about in the future. And that's when I started really digging my heels in of this is we can talk about dreams, we can talk about visions, we can talk about all those things, but if that's the only thing that's being talked about, then it's going to be very difficult. You have to have the people in place, you have to have the processes in place. And that be a donkey, not a unicorn that resonates with me because figure out how to sell it and we'll figure out how to build it and the accountants will figure out how to account for it. But do those things. See if you can get cash flow positive. See if you can start getting a little bit of income. See if you can start doing those things. Because if you can figure those things out at the small end, you'll get them at the big end. If you're just looking at valuation, what do you have? Are you building a house of cards? So I'm sure there are CEOs out there listening to this and entrepreneurs are going to listen to this and go, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Right? Being a unicorn is what it's all about. And hey, have at it. Right? I don't want to squash anybody's dreams. If you've got it, you've got it. But that's another one that resonated with me, which was you figure out how to do the basics, for sports fans, the blocking and tackling, right? The fielding, the hitting, the bunting, hitting free throws for the basketball fans. Right? You figure out how to do those things, everything else is going to come along with it. So be a donkey, not a unicorn, Grish.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I feel like that's even a nugget, which is like more the word of wisdom or a piece of advice and that you might tell, your favorite client. I almost wonder, like, I'm curious, like the unicorn versus the donkey, do the unicorns typically have those quote unquote basics, the blocking, tackling, all those things? Do they have those things in place anyway? So I almost feel like in order to be, even if you wanted to be a unicorn, you're not going to be a unicorn without having those quote unquote basics in place anyways.
Yeah, that's a good point. And if you're a unicorn and you've got donkeys working for you, that's probably the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
This person set the article as it's binary, right?
Got it.
You're either one or the other, but I think your insight is spot on. And I think it's something to look at is that the unicorns, but oftentimes, I don't want to call any companies out, but you get these companies with these massive valuations, public companies with these massive valuations, but don't make money. My core, I cock my head a little bit and go, I don't get it. What am I missing? What am I not seeing? What is everybody else seeing? Is this an emotional reaction? Is it going up in value because the emotion behind it? But what happens after so many quarters of negative earnings? Right, you're burning cash. You have to make some money, and I would assume, I don't want to assume, so I would think that a lot of people listening to this, right, they're not looking to be a unicorn. They're starting out. They're entrepreneurs. They're bootstrapping, and that bootstrapping is can you make some money that first year, that second year? When I started my own home building business, my goal was to make money. We started in October. My goal was to make money the next year. And that was my only goal. I didn't care if it was $1. I just didn't want to not make anything. And we did okay, reinvested, and we did better. just about every year, year over year. And I look at that and go, maybe I didn't think big enough, but it worked for me.
Yeah, and I feel like there's so much power in being able to kind of make that decision, for yourself. But I almost feel like, there's those that may, there's I always say smoke and mirrors. Sometimes there's smoke and mirrors around those evaluations as well too, where it seems that they're, the unicorn status and, and however people define it, that makes sense. But I think if you don't have those kind of foundational elements in place, just as you said so well, you start to wonder what's being missed or what's not seen. And that's where you see a lot of these documentaries and things that come up about what happened and why, we shouldn't have missed those things because the blocking and tackling wasn't taken care of.
Yeah, we won't talk about doing tequila as the CEO's doing tequila shots and he's letting 70% of the staff go because they're not
Right.
making any money. Not to call anybody out, but I I think you're spot on with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, perfect. Well, I wanted to ask you now my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And our goal is to have different quote unquote CEOs on this show. So, Joel, what does being a CEO mean to you?
For me, it's multi pronged. Being the CEO is being the visionary. Being the CEO is having the responsibility for both the business and the people in it. Being the CEO is understanding where you want to take your business. It's also defining the success of the business. So is it growth? Is it trying to get to that unicorn status? Is it trying to help as many people as you possibly can? Is it supplying jobs within an industry or an area that needs it? It's really how you define success. And I think another part of it is we go to that leadership or leader term or phrase is really leading the people in the company, and most importantly, core values. I have a client, they don't use the phrase core values, they use culture promises.
Mm.
And I love culture promises. It just has a different way of saying really what's important. And these are the things that we promise to do for our employees. And these are the things that we really want our employees to promise to our our partners, whether they're referral partners, whether they're clients. And it's just such a strong phrase that, again, it changed my lens of what it looks like. So I think of being a CEO, it's all of those things. Some days it's being a little bit crazier than the next person. Sometimes it's working harder. Sometimes it's just having more arguments with your employees to figure out what's best for the company. But leadership is a big part, vision is a big part. But I go back to the core values and the cultural promises. And as a CEO, are you are you withholding those? Are you walking the walk, or are you just talking the talk?
Nice. I love that multi-pronged kind of approach and definition and perspective because I think so many times, as we talked about before, it's not just we're focusing on this one thing. It's figuring out how those things are going to work together and what that's going to look like. And I think very much so the role of the leadership, the CEO, entrepreneur, business owner, but that person is in charge of making sure that those things are happening on a daily basis, and you don't realize how it impacts the people that are within the organization, but also how you have the I don't know if it's responsibility or freedom or a combination of both of those things to kind of paint that picture in the way that you see. So, when you're making those promises within your culture, you're starting to create a vision, I think, for the organization, but also for the people within the organization. And that has a tremendous impact in so many different ways. So, I love that definition because I think it really approaches a lot of the things that when decisions are trying to be made or not being made are into consideration when that's happening.
Yeah, one thing the EOS teaches is, we talk about, and I really enjoy this piece of it. They talk about the core values or the cultural promises, and they talk about, it's simple: plus, plus, minus, minus. Either you're 100% in, you're mostly in, or you're not in. And when you make it that black and white, if you have the good core values, the good cultural promises, you can look at your employees, and really as a CEO, you have to look at yourself for it. Sorry, if you're a CEO, you really have to look at yourself first. That mirror has got to be held up to yourself every day. And either you're living them or you're not. And if you're not, either you have the wrong ones or maybe you're in the wrong seat.
Yeah, maybe you're the wrong one, or you need to become the right person. And I think a lot of times when we
Right.
have that vision, we have to kind of step into that as individuals, but also, as an organization as well too, before we get crowned, whatever that might be.
Yeah. Yeah. Great point.
Awesome, awesome,
Great
awesome. Well,
point.
Joel, truly appreciate that definition. And of course, I appreciate your time even more. So, what I want to do now is pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional that you can let our readers and listeners know. And of course, how best people will get a hold of you, find about all the awesome things that you're working on.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm not the best at marketing myself. Best way to get a hold of me is, I do have a website, providencesolutionsgroup.com. Email would be joel@providencesolutionsgroup.com. And, I'll talk about real quickly, my ideal client is an entrepreneur who's banging their head up against the wall a little bit and just wants some help. So if you're a CEO or a president of an entrepreneurial company, let's say 4 million or 5 million up to 50 million, and you're looking for some help, just reach out. And I mean that earnestly. The conversations, I've had way more conversations with people where it's just a conversation and run something by me or want to talk through something with me. And I love meeting people. I love having these conversations and helping people. My goal is to help more and more people. My mind shift has become much more of an abundance. How can I help people? So I enjoy doing that. And if there's something I can do to help someone or a connection I can make, and I send notes to people all the time. I'm the most transparent person. If I'm not your person, or I'm going to be too expensive, or I don't have the time, I'm going to be the first one to say, I'm not your person. But the great thing is I'm building a network of other fractionals, CMOs, CROs, fractional COOs. There's one in Denver specifically who she said, these are the 6 things I will not touch. And I go, those are my 6 things. And I go,
There
she
you
goes, what don't you like
go.
doing? And I go, these are the 4 things I won't touch. And she's like, oh my gosh, I've got 20 years background in that. I'm like, yeah, like
There
this is
you go.
perfect. Like
Yeah.
this is a puzzle piece that fits together of if I get this, I'm like, well, here's someone who not only is she good at what she does, but she's very passionate about it as well. So when she says, for example, she doesn't want to work with people in the construction industry, well, that's my background, right? I tell people I've earned every one of these gray hairs on my head and in my beard. Like that's my forte, right? So I say SaaS. SaaS to me is an attitude of a 12-year-old. Oh, you mean SaaS? Oh, yeah. I don't do SaaS. I don't do software as a service. So here, you want to speak with this person. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to have a conversation, whether it's a video chat, a phone call, a text, an email, whatever it is. Because I love to learn, and talking to people I found is the best way to learn and get connected with great people like you, Gresh.
Yeah, well, you make it easier because you're doing great things. So, obviously, we're going to have the links and information in the show notes as well too, to make it a little bit easier for everybody to reach out to Joel. But truly appreciate you for all the awesome work that you're doing. I love that you have that mentality, that abundant mentality, and you speak it, you live it, you breathe, you do all the things with it. That's how we got connected and why you're here today. So, thank you so much for reminding us of how important that is to have that abundant mentality and how there's opportunities that line up when you say yes to opportunities, but sometimes when you say maybe not, this is not my best fit. So both those things have power. So thank you so much for showing us that power. And I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Yeah, thank you, Gresh. I greatly appreciate you.